Ooh, welcome back to the Zyori Podcast. Hello, and thank you for joining us here for episode 64 of the podcast. It is March 2nd, 2015, about 4:30 here on the Pacific Coast. It's a Monday. It's been Techies Day here on the Zyori stream, and, well, unfortunately, we had an update. I guess it's good since there's some Summit 3 goodies coming. I don't know if it's the compendium, the ticket, or both, but the chest. I don't know what exactly's gotten in the store, but it's been a biggin'. And, well, it's taken Steam down with it, and now just Dota 2. So instead of sitting around with our thumbs up our butts waiting for it to come back up, we're going to do impromptu Zyori Podcast. Not really so impromptu. I meant to do it yesterday, but I was distracted. Hello, House of Cards is out. And, oh, man, the Season 3, it's so good. If you have not seen House of Cards at all, and you're a Netflix subscriber, you're doing yourself a big-time injustice. It is amazing. A top-notch series. It is very American. If you're not American, it might be difficult. It's about American government and conspiracies that way. If you don't have any understanding of the structure of like Congress or the White House or executive branches, all that kind of stuff, it's probably a little confusing, but it's amazing. Kevin Spacey's crazy, and yeah, the third season is great. I have not finished it yet. We're not really going to talk about the series too much on this podcast. I would kind of like to, but I feel like when I power through a show, when I binge watch it, it's just a guilty pleasure, and it's not really like I'm digesting it. I know what's going on, but I haven't finished it yet. I fell asleep during episode 11 last night, so it's not the kind of show you really want to watch before bed when you're sleepy. There's a lot of moving pieces, a lot of shit going on with the characters, and a lot of folks that look similar. It's sort of like Game of Thrones a little bit in that sense. If you don't follow it closely, it's very easy to fall behind and not really understand what's going on in the show. But talking about this podcast here, there is one little thing you need to know. The subscriber sound might be popping up. I left it on. I usually turn it off for the podcast because it's kind of obnoxious and sellouty. You know, every time I see like a video of Waga, every 10 seconds there's that stupid Naga Siren sound or the TA sound whenever he gets a donation. I'm like, Jesus, dude, could you just turn it off sometimes? But I'm gonna do the opposite. I'm gonna use it every so often. I was really excited about playing Techies today. We're like 7-2. Techies is amazing. I'm going to talk about it here in just a moment, but hopefully this will make up for it. So it's the Spice Girls. If you hear Spice Girls in the background, that's somebody subscribing. You might get a little shout out here in the middle of the podcast. So anyway, moving forward, Techies, the talk of the town. What is up with this hero? You know, I had never played Techies at all, and I'm in Strug City in my solo queue. Yesterday I did a long session. I played like 14 games, I guess. I went 3-11. That is terrible. That is abysmal. Those are the kind of days that just make you question why you're playing Dota and why I spend most of my time thinking, talking, or otherwise doing something involving the game. You know, you get those just back-to-back shit queues where somebody leaves, somebody rages out, you pick a hero, and they flip out and ask you why you're such an idiot and took the worst hero in the game, and it's just infinitely frustrating to lose that much. But last night I had this moment of frustration where I tweeted out and I said, guys, I'm struggling. Help me. I need help. Somebody send me a life raft. And somebody said, you know what I do when I'm struggling, when times get tough? I just queue up a game of Techies. That shows them, right? How else to stick it to a bunch of pugs than just pick up some Techies. Make them handle the lanes. You don't worry about last hit, and you just set a trap, and you pick up the gold when people run by. Oh my, it's great. So I tried it. I had a go at it. I played Techies a little bit in Dota 1. I thought the model was really cute, really adorable, the way he little hobbled around a little bit. I thought the idea was kind of neat. I was terrible, absolute shit tier, one of the worst Techies you'd ever seen, but thought the concept was cool. So I'm familiar with the strategy involved of Techies. When he came out in Dota, I remember talking to Merlini about it. I watched some of Waga's streams. There were some really like sick 3-hour like Techies games where they just turtled forever. So anyhow, I had to go, and I dominated my first game. I was on a losing streak playing like 3,400 solo queue shitstorm pubs. You know, these people are terrible. I'm terrible. Everyone's terrible. It's 4 in the morning. Everybody's drunk. The worst games imaginable. I'm just putting mines everywhere, and people are just blowing up. And I had the time of my life. Just sitting there by myself in my bedroom, Red Bull after Red Bull, cigarette after cigarette, wasting my life away. Then finally, I found the cure. It's squee, spleen, and spoon. Those 3 motherfuckers right there. So today I dedicated to Techies Day. Realized I had a Techies Arcana, which I wasn't using yesterday. And that's all we've been doing. That's how I've spent my morning, just making bombs and blowing people up. Figurative bombs. This is not literal. This is Techies. They are a character in a video game. Jesus Christ. I wish I didn't say that so explicitly. No, it's been really fun, though. A really weird hero. I see why people don't like it, though. It's very divisive. I've been tweeting about it, and the reaction's 50-50. You either get the love, the, oh, wow, yeah, Techies is great. You know, Merlini, like, yeah, Techies is fun. That's cool. Then you get the, ugh, IRL Dan's game. Like, why would you ever stoop to that level? Like, oh, you're one of those. And I'm not like, oh, if they don't really take the counters, I'm first pick. I'm like, hey, team, Techies, first pick, lock in, ready, fuck them. That's how I do it. You know, you got to show them who's the boss. Who's the boss? I don't really smoke cigarettes, guys. That was figurative. That was part of the whole bit. It's funnier if you're picturing someone like chain smoking cigarettes, addicted to caffeine, just turtle up. Oh, my life is just MMR. You know, it fits the model. You know. Anyway, Jesus, guys, don't take things so literally when we're fucking around in the podcast. Wow. Oh. I just saw that out of the corner of my eye in the chat there. I try not to look at it, but it's a bit distracting. So anyway, looking forward to getting back to Techies today. I know what that peril can be like, though, when you're stuck in that solo queue, the sort of ladder anxiety feeling. I don't really get ladder anxiety. The way I think about it is the lower you go on all those losing streaks, the shittier your opponents are going to be. You ever have those moments where you think to yourself, man, I just want to make a Smurf account so I can stomp people? Wouldn't that be fun? I can just slap them down, practice my mid a little bit, play Shadow Fiend, a hero I suck with at an equal skill level, but you can shit on kids that are way worse than you. Well, if you just lose enough games on your main account, you basically have a Smurf because everyone's so shitty. Oh, we've got a... That's Spice Girls interrupting us there. Who is that? Pimp of the Moon. I can't. This text is too small. I can't read it. Thank you, sir. You're awesome. I appreciate that. Sir or madam, I should say. All right. Wow. That is a really long... There's a really long jam there. I really picked a long sub sound for this podcast. All right, I'm going to try not to react to it next time. I'm going to do my best. But you know, you lose enough games, and eventually you're down there. You're down to that point where you're just hating life, and you need to do something different. So my advice to you: just check your ego out. Put it outside. Don't let everybody making fun of you make a difference, and you try Techies. You know, watch some videos first, look at some guides, maybe try it in an unranked game. Techies isn't the easiest little biscuit to fry when you're playing ranked and people are actually playing well and really trying hard. And rest assured rather that your teammates will hate you. They will be angry when you pick him. They'll call you a noob. They may leave. They may insult your mother. But this is to be expected. This is standard territory when you're playing the Goblin Techies. And make sure you crank up those in-game sounds because the rhetoric across the little characters is just top-notch. It's so adorable. So cute indeed. So, all right, this podcast is going to be kind of weird. I was saying the last couple days, basically on stream, but also on Twitter a little bit, I don't have any good topics this week for the podcast. I feel like the standard's been set pretty high since we started doing these video podcasts. We did the one with Shannon that kind of came out of nowhere, and then the few after that were really good. The post-DAC, and then even that whole porn rant that we went on the other week was fun. I got a lot of positive feedback. I didn't realize Dota fans liked porn so much. Even the female fans, they're sending me notes saying, "Oh, that was really interesting. It's fun to see that you're a real person and you get excited about things outside of Dota." I'm like, wow. Well, I'm glad that I communicated that. I don't know any casters that aren't real people outside of Dota as well. But cool, more power to you. So anyway, I didn't have a good ranty topic this week, so I did note down some questions before we started the podcast from Twitch chat. Well, there were only a couple good ones. There were a lot of sinkers, not too many floaters, but that's okay. We've got a couple of meaty ones that I think I can talk about for a while. So long story short, this could be a slightly shorter podcast, maybe only 45 minutes or so, as I'm trying to get back into Techies Town. That's really where I'm trying to live today. So, before we get into that, Summit 3, somebody wanted me to make my predictions. And, oh, we got another one, Pimp of Potom. Is that the same person? Or is that a Pimp of Potom? How many pimps do we have here that are subbing? Jesus, the pimps. All right, well, thank you, Pimp. I appreciate it. Jeez, wow. I said I wasn't going to react to it. I lied. So, okay, I do want to talk about that In the Studio episode we did the other day, just a little bit. That was one of the things that people were sort of asking about in the chat and weren't really phrasing it in a proper question. But I had it in my notes anyway. We talked about the Union Gaming scandal of them, their past history of pausing and being suspected of stream sniping and attempted ghosting, but the more recent one when they were caught in the Dota 2 Canada Cup where they had a stream open in the background. They have a 24-hour stream going in their house, so that's how people saw that somebody was tabbing in and out of the stream. They were punished. They were DQ'd from that event. They were uninvited from the Summit 3, kind of before it was announced, but still they lost their seat there, and then they were also DQ'd from the Join Dota MLG thing. And we decided that it would be kind of cool to do an episode of In the Studio where we talk about the topic of cheating, and also use this current event example to, delve into it a little bit, talk to these guys. We ended up getting an interview with the captain Ben Jazz and their translator Azatoth, and I thought it went pretty well, honestly. I was a little bit nervous going into it. Anytime you do one of these real kind of journalism pieces in esports is tricky, and I say real journalism in air quotes because it's not really real journalism, right? We're still wearing our kiddie shoes, we got our floaties on in the shallow end when it comes to journalism here. We're talking about esports relative to real life or even just real sports in general. There are some mirrors, but it just hasn't been developed that much, and there frankly just isn't enough money in it to make it worthwhile to really put in the effort and research it takes to do top-notch journalism. Anyway, I mean, we can all remember my first real taste of it, the Marco interview. If you don't know what I'm talking about, it's on the ZyoriTV YouTube channel, ZyoriTV 1, the number 1 at the end, on YouTube. It's still it's probably like in my top 5 most viewed videos. Notorious for Charlie really laying into the speed gaming manager, and me laughing while it was going on. The problem with that setup was I set myself up to fail, because the way that show was, it was modeled after a show where everyone's in the studio except everybody was remote and nobody had a camera except for me. So the main feed for the show is just me, and it's a tighter shot than this one. It's just like my upper body just Zyori's face. If you have this shit full screen, it's just like a little lower third and then my face right there. So the interview with Marco was like after all the shit with MLG and speed gaming, and it all come out of all the bullshit that he had done, and Charlie is just like going after him. He's going ham. He's calling him out. He's an attack dog, just nipping at his heels. And I'm supposed to be the host, the moderator, and I had to mute my mic, and I am just ruffling. I'm like face palm, like head back in the chair. I think the actual thumbnail on YouTube is a picture of me going like making this crazy face, like mid laugh and mid like swing, like, oh Charlie, you really got him. You really stuck it to him. It's really hard. It's surprisingly difficult in those emotionally charged situations, because you're never going to please everybody. There's a demographic of people that are hungry for drama and want you to do exactly what Charlie did. Just go ham, no holds barred, just go at him. Bark down his throat, bite his heels, rip his pants off, and chew into that calf, That can be cool and at times appropriate. I don't know that it was super inappropriate against Marco, given how ridiculous that whole situation was, but that is really unappealing to folks that are a little more traditional and want kind of that classic respectful journalistic approach, the innocent until proven guilty and all that kind of stuff. Like the union gaming thing, we got messages on both sides. We got a lot of messages from people saying, wow, I'm really glad you guys approached that like level-headed. You didn't go at them too hard, but you still asked them tough questions. You gave them space to talk. I think you guys handled it really well. And then, of course, you just look at the Reddit thread. There's a ton of people in there that are like, oh, this is terrible. How much did BTS get paid for this? And, all that kind of stuff. This is just like damage control. They're just assisting in damage control for union gaming. And I mean, we don't really have an interest either way. I mean, frankly, we don't really care about union gaming that much. They're an okay team. They were going to be part of the Summit 3 after all this stuff came out. There were a lot of other teams that were willing to take the spot that didn't have a dark cloud surrounding them, so it just seemed like a no-brainer for us, especially since the event wasn't even announced yet. It just felt, somewhat appropriate. Anyway, outside of that, we don't really care about union gaming. If they look good, if they look bad, that's on them. They're doing their own thing. We don't know them. We don't interface with them very often outside of the context of tournament organizer relationships. So we really had no vested interest in trying to make them look good. We kind of wanted to come at it. It's always difficult when there's a translator. Like part of what made that Marco interview so ridiculous was the ability of Charlie to interrupt him when he was saying something stupid, and for them to interrupt each other. So it's not like a formal debate, a presidential debate, where one party speaks for 5 minutes and the other party speaks for 5 minutes, and it's a very organized back and forth. With Charlie and Marco, it was constant one-upping each other, yelling over each other, and that's when it gets really feisty and interesting. And sometimes a little bit of that is necessary to really get to the core of an issue. Sometimes when someone's bullshitting, you give them a chance. Usually you start slow, you ramp up, you get their guard down a little bit, good cop, bad cop, and then you hit them with something hard. Once they're softened up a little bit, you get into that gooey center, get your hand in there and pull out some for yourself. So anyway, I think it went pretty well. It's tricky when you have a translator. That's the point that I was at. Sorry, I glanced at my notes and got sidetracked there. it's really hard when you have a translator because you can't do that. You can't interrupt him halfway through. You're always conscious or worried about things getting lost in translation, and it's hard to ask really wordy questions. I think I'm a victim, or I'm guilty of that myself, where my questions are often a little bit too wordy in general. It's like, as an interviewer, something I've had to work on a lot over the past few years. And in a situation like that, where there's a lot of moving pieces, my questions were kind of multi-question questions, and that can be hard to translate and then translate the answer back, because usually it's a little bit longer. So anyway, given some of those limitations, I was pretty happy with the way we handled it. I think there's this very weird bias on Reddit in the general tone of what kind of racism is okay and what kind of racism isn't. In my examples are, I think, like, it's sort of generally accepted to be kind of racist against Peru and like Russia as one of the like shitty areas of Dota to play, or of Dota players, you know, those kind of notorious demographics. And like even like Jewish stuff, you see like Beyond the Shekel comments on there, and like things that are pretty anti-Semitic that get upvoted. I'm like, this is, if there were comparable degrees of racism but towards like black folks or Chinese people or any other like demographic here, this would not be okay. Mods might actually ban this for being hateful, or it would at least be downvoted for being distasteful. And then you see all this kind of stuff about South America and Peru, and it's like, you have to admit there's just a degree of cultural bias that comes into this discussion when you have this predominantly English-speaking community that makes up the West, and South America is a part of it, but they're kind of their own thing because they speak their own language and don't really interface quite as much. You know, Peru's a lot more self-contained, or South America in general, in terms of Dota, is a lot more self-contained than the rest of the West outside of China and the SEA area. So it's just tricky. It's never as black and white as it seems, and you know, a lot of people come into those kind of shows with their minds made up already, and it doesn't really matter what we say. We're not going to change the minds of people that come into that with their minds made up, and you know, we're really trying to target the people that are coming in with an open mind, or the people that are very passionate about it and want to learn more and hear what the people have to say firsthand. That's really our goal. I see it as, you know, facilitating perspective, providing a platform to give people a voice, and you know, extend their reach a little bit so they can, you know, say what it is they need to say. Sure, we're going to ask them the hard questions, at least to some degree. I think we were pretty medium. I don't think we were over the top ridiculous with, you know, trying to point fingers, and I don't think we were over the top with lobbing softballs. But one thing that was really silly that a lot of people were cynical about was that we didn't show them video clips of times that they really fucked up. And I don't really understand how that's relevant to their current roster. Like, well, look at this, clearly in this instance here, they unpaused and then they got a kill, or like, you know, some video clip. And I'm like, we don't need to show this right now. You seem to be forgetting that this team is 4 new members. It's basically a new team. Ben Jazz is the only link, aside from, you know, the staff that supports the players. That was the big thing of why we ignored all that stuff, because if this was the same team, we would have happily showed that kind of evidence, because they didn't really deny it, but, you know, we didn't talk about it in great detail. But when you're dealing with a totally new group of players, a lot of that old stuff that people were trying to bring up, it goes out the window a little bit. It doesn't hold nearly as much credence as a lot of the general tone would have had you believe on Reddit and some of the various other places on the web. So, anyway, that's just my little follow-up to the show. Like I said, we were pretty happy with it overall. It is always hard with a translator. Any interview with a translator is always going to be substandard to an interview where you can speak the same language. Always something to keep in mind with that kind of stuff. I think that's probably where I'm going to leave it. Oh yeah, it's the shaking cameras because I keep leaning on my desk. I'll try to stop leaning on it. Ugh. And I need a tripod for this camera. Holy shit. Okay, anyway, where are we here? Oh wow, that was a lengthy talk about Peru. So, I think we'll do the second half of this where I'll take some random questions, and then I'll kind of open it up when we're talking about the questions for you guys to post some questions in there, and, you know, no problemo. Can take a few on the fly. I love doing Q&A, so whenever there's enough people to send questions, I'm always happy to do it. So here's the storm. I want to talk about that because I also want to talk about Strife, and let me just add that to my list. Now, Strife is a game I feel obligated to talk about, partially because of my history with S2, the company that makes Strife and, of course, makes Heroes of Newerth, the kind of predecessor to Dota 2. Maybe that's a strong statement. A stepping stone to advance the MOBA scene in between Dota 1 and Dota 2. That's probably a more fair way to say it. It seems like Strife is not going so well. I came across this article on the esports subreddit, a subreddit that I frequent on occasion. A bit of an oxymoron there, I suppose, but it's a strange subforum, or subreddit rather, because there's a group of people that go there with these really dumb ideas that have no idea what's going on in esports. They're like, okay, I'm going to make a website with volunteer writers, and we're going to cover 4 games, and we're going to be a news portal, and we're going to give Gosu gamers a run for their money. It's like, yeah, okay, dude, good luck. You know, talk to me in a month when you've given up. I've seen this over and over, rinse and repeat. People that think they can just come into esports and make a quick dollar by making some sort of volunteer-based news site. I don't understand. I mean, I had the same idea like 4 years ago when I first started in esports, but things were a little different back then. It's also an interesting subreddit because it is a good feed of news for games that I don't care about. You know, I'm not subscribed to the Strife subreddit, and this article probably wouldn't have been on there anyway because it's kind of shitting on their game, and that's the kind of stuff their mods would clean up. So anyway, it's a useful subreddit, but if you want to go somewhere to make yourself feel better about you, that is a place that you can go to do it, because there are people on there using it for self-promotion that should just not spend time promoting themselves and spend time getting better at what they're writing. Anyway, it seems like Strife is in the dumper. I think it's still in beta. I don't think they ever actually announced it, but here, we'll just read the end part here, this article. This is the last paragraph. It came out yesterday on the 1st. The future of Strife is uncertain. Recently, the developers have been shrinking their team and pushing new and infrequent patches that drastically change the gameplay. With the path that the game is currently heading towards, it's very unlikely that it will die forgotten, with most never even hearing so much of a whisper of it. Many will not see this as being something lost, but I see it as a potential hero that died too young. A scene that, like many others, never got past its infant stages. It may be too early to plan the funeral, but as of now, it looks like it might be time to recognize it as a failure. Damn, the slams. Poor Strife. It did die so young. I don't understand, again, we've talked about this in the past, but what was the target market that S2 was after with this game? I don't know if any of you have played it, but it's sort of like League of Legends meets an easier version of League of Legends. Like, people talk about League as a watered-down version of Dota. I think that's a fair analogy. Similar to Hearthstone is a watered-down version of Magic. It has similar mechanics, some of the core concepts. It's the same genre of game, but there's just a degree of depth that is missing in the one that seems a little bit easier. And you know, I don't hate League of Legends. I have a level 30 account. I've played quite a few matches of it. It's not a terrible game, but it just doesn't have the same level of depth when it comes to the mechanics that Dota does. The lack of denies is something people constantly go to, but it does kind of change the state of how you play the game. And Strife was obviously modeled after League. They wanted to go for casuals. It had that kind of built-in grindy system where you get to level 30 or whatever the magic number is, and that's where you unlock all of the magic talents, and until you grind there, you don't get all the features that the hero can do all the way. You know, that built-in free-to-play model that's now tried and true thanks to Riot. S2, not really innovators, more so imitators. Looking to copy that approach. Not a bad way to do it when it's proven to really work pretty effectively. The early access thing, maybe not so much. I'm not sure if that was part of the Strife model or not, now that I'm thinking about it. But they had other things as well, where the big feature, I think, is you share last hits in lane. It doesn't matter who gets it, you share the gold. Sort of like Heroes of the Storm, except you still get gold for last hits. It's just, if there's a carry and a support next to each other, whoever gets the last hit, it's just split evenly. So the laning phase is a lot different. The base movement speed is higher. The map is a little bit smaller, supposed to encourage early roaming so people don't get left behind. If your lane is shitting, people can rotate for you more easily. Of course, you can just TP war over whenever you want. You got a little pet that follows you around. There's some automated AI that does damage for you. What could be better? It's super easy. Oh, and the out-of-combat regeneration. Everybody has the Slark passive. You're out of sight, you just start regenning like crazy so that you can come back to battle more often. Less downtime, more action. The MOBA brought to you by S2 Games. You know, that kind of bullshit. It sounds okay, but my question from the beginning was, is there a large group of people that play League of Legends now that say to themselves, God damn it, this game is too complicated. I wish there was an even easier version of League of Legends. I don't think that's that many people. I think most people playing League of Legends are pretty satisfied playing League of Legends. They think it's a cool game, you know, and the people that think it's dumb play Dota 2. The people that think both of them are dumb play Heroes of the Storm, or the 10 people that still play Heroes of Newerth. You know, there's already the niches in the MOBA scene have already kind of been dominated by these big players. So I never really had a good idea of who this game was appealing to that S2 was creating, and it seems like they never really were able to answer that question either, if this game is truly going to be in as much trouble as it sounds like. Now, it seems like they had a little bit of a competitive scene going. They're saying it's early days, as if this game's been around for a while. You know, every new esport has like an itsgosu.com type website that's chasing after it, that's eager to do some sort of content for a budding esport that they think is kind of showing potential. It could become a robust scene like the League of Legends of 4 years ago. Get in while it's small at the ground floor. You can be that first studio and people really latch onto you. You know, that's sort of a tried and true esports strategy that I think worked for the past few years. We're getting to that point where the infrastructure is there, the scenes are there, that you can't just be one of these small startup esports and expect to move into a scene and be able to do something. You know, ESL can do it just like that. They have 10 million times more money than you do, more resources, better talent. You can't just walk into it and figure it out once you get there anymore. And it seems like they pulled a Honcast, a Flaming Cow TV. I don't know who this is, but some studio that was doing Strife coverage, and sounds like it was all good, and then there was no money to be made. I guess S2 stopped paying people. That's sort of what this article makes it sound like. A lot of this is hearsay, but now it seems apparent that they've been cutting back with how much money they've been putting into Strife in general, the dev costs, the marketing, and whenever you have a game that's still in beta, is it actually out? Is Strife? Let's see, Wikipedia. I think it's still in beta, but I don't even know. Did it come out and I missed it? Development. Strife was announced, let's see, as of the 22nd of February, Strife went into closed beta and contained a total of 15 heroes. Okay, so it's still in closed beta. That's it. It's been in development for 2 years. So anytime you have a game that's in closed beta and already you're having to cut back funding on marketing, it's not good. It's definitely not good. What was that one Strife advertisement sexist? There was this weird like sexist Strife advertisement. Oh, I think this is it. Let me see if I can pull it up. I remember I talked about it on a podcast a while ago. No, that's not it. Strife S2. I think it was on the Girl Gamers subreddit. So of course it was like absolutely ridiculous. S2 lays off 25 employees. Oh, that's good. It was something about like a game for girls, or like something about how like girls tired of not having female characters that can carry. This is the game for you. It was something really like abrasive like that just totally did not work. It seemed like their advertising campaigns did not go so well. Anyway, enough shitting on Strife and S2. It was more just a sentiment to something to follow up on. I've been talking about Strife since they announced it on this podcast. It's been something that's near and dear to my heart to some degree, so it seems just only appropriate to continue following up. 5.6k subscribers on their subreddit. That is abysmal. 5.6k for a game. You think about that compared to like what's another like up and coming game here, like Smite, for example. Like Smite has almost 100k. Smite has 50k. I mean, Smite's a little different. They've actually run a successful $1 million tournament and that kind of stuff. But still, they just broke 50k subs on the subreddit. 5.6k for Strife. That just, you got to interact with your community, man. You got to do it. You got to do it. Dawngate, that's the other one. Yeah, I'm not surprised Dawngate died. That game had what was they're going for? Another 6.6k subscribers here on their subreddit. Goodbye, friends. We talked about that on this podcast a little bit. What was the other one? Infinite Crisis. Let's see here. They have 2,000. Is this game still going? See, the only thing about Infinite Crisis that made me think it might have a little bit of a chance is that it's based off of superheroes. The lore is already there. So there are people, like, if you really like Superman, hey, you know, maybe you want to play Superman in Infinite Crisis. I don't know if he's actually in that game. I don't know, Marvel, Cap, whatever, dude. But still, there's characters you can identify with, and that's where Heroes of the Storm comes in. I think it works because Heroes of the Storm is based on WoW lore. Same, just Warcraft lore in general. I mean, same as Hearthstone, rather. God, I'm getting all these games. I can't read and talk at the same time. Anytime I start stuttering like that, I'm trying to do too many things at once. Hearthstone, I think if that game was created in a vacuum by some independent studio with the exact same mechanics but just different names and made up lore, it would not have been nearly as popular as it is. But people like me that don't really care about collectible card games, I don't really like Hearthstone that much, but I play it casually every so often. I like that I recognize the characters, I identify with the lore, and it's cool to see how they take the mechanics from the big screen and like World of Warcraft to, you know, Alex Straza in the form of a card. It's kind of neat. It's nostalgic, something I can identify with, and that makes me want to play it a little bit. You know, I'll at least buy a pack here or there. You know, I've dropped 30 or 40 bucks on that game buying cards. I wouldn't do that for really any other collectible card game, I don't think. The difference with Heroes of the Storm, though, and why I think this game has more of a future than Strife or Dawngate or Infinite Crisis or any of these other non-niche specific kind of MOBA games, is that it's very different, and I almost hesitate to put it in the MOBA category. I think Smite has been able to carve out this really niche market base because the gameplay is so different. I don't know how many of you have played it, but it controls like an RPG. You use ASWD to move your character around. It's first-person perspective. It's kind of cool. It's a lot different. It's very League inspired. You can tell that the developers were League of Legends fans and wanted to adopt a game based on similar mechanics, but that had an extra layer of depth in terms of camera control and all this kind of stuff. It's not very Dota-like. If you like Dota a lot more than League, you probably won't like Smite, just the way the items are upgraded, the way the camps are in the jungle. It's a much more static experience, whereas I think Dota is a bit more versatile. Heroes of the Storm is different because of the objectives. You know, all of these other games, the objective is ultimately pushing the throne, but most importantly, killing. The way to level up most effectively is to kill heroes. You don't get experience from killing structures, all that kind of stuff. And, you know, look at the score that's on the top. It's hero kills. That's really the big metric we use. Like, oh, who's winning? Oh, Cloud9's up, you know, 37-3. You're like, wow, that's crazy. That's a stomp. That's a big metric we use. Even just saying like, yeah, they're up to 30-20. It's like, wow, you can say to yourself, they've got a sizable little lead. That's a good metric. Heroes of the Storm uses team experience. All the XP is shared across your team. And the number at the top is what level your team is. You all level up together, and then as you level up, you access talents every like 3 or 4 levels. But once you get to the next point in the talent tree, you can choose between 5 different talents. So you can build the hero very different. You know, you can play the Pudge-like character, and you can, you know, make him a super tank. You can make his cleave do super big damage, or whatever, not cleave, whatever his big pound thing is, his slam, I guess. It's kind of cool. You can customize the characters a little bit throughout the game, and you can choose different ultimates and that kind of shit. So the lack of items, and then the fact that you're not really worried about killing the other team as much, you're worried about doing the objective, collecting the little sticks or collecting the coins, or, you know, getting the bugs, you know, unlocking the Dragonite, capturing the tower. There's all these things that help you push faster than you would be able to just by killing people and pushing on your own. So my whole point with all of this is that the reason I like Heroes of the Storm, it was funny, it popped up earlier when we were trying to get Dota to update. People were like, ew, Heroes of the Storm, dance game, Kappa, ugh, why would you play that? And it's surprisingly fun because it doesn't feel like a watered down Dota. When I play League of Legends, I can enjoy it. You know, I can get into it if I'm playing with, like, real-life friends that only play League and don't play any Dota. It's like, well, I'd rather play League with them than sit here playing Dota by myself while they all play League together. You know, it's just a social activity to bring you together. I feel like I'm playing watered-down Dota. I feel like it's Dota, except there's less to do, the laning stage is more boring, and the game's just more one-dimensional. No buybacks, no glyph, no TP scrolls, no courier, yada, yada, yada. When I'm playing Heroes of the Storm, I feel like I'm playing a different game. Like I said, I hesitate to put it in the MOBA category. It feels like it's almost its own genre. It's like a sub-genre of the MOBA. Because, yeah, you still kill a throne. It's still 5-on-5. It's still kind of like a mini RPG in a session-based battle with structures in the way. But the objectives really change just the state of the game and the way that it plays. I really like the idea of team shared experience. I think that's what Strife was striving to do with sharing last hits in lane. It's like Strife came 30% of the way there, and Blizzard got 100% of the way there with this mechanic change. It makes it a different game and gives you a niche, you know, gives you something to carve out. And again, Blizzard's got that bloody upper hand of, you know, having a lore and a big following of people that will do pretty much anything Blizzard does. And anything Blizzard puts out, they'll try it. They have BlizzCon, they have this core demographic of, I just like Blizzard games. Just Blizzard games in general. Not all of them are my favorites, but I like Diablo, I like Warcraft, I like StarCraft. I'm one of those people. I have played pretty much every Blizzard game except the early ones. I never played The Lost Vikings, haven't played Warcraft 2 or Warcraft 1, but, you know, I played Brood War, played StarCraft 2, played Warcraft 3, played Thrones and Throne. That's how I got introduced to Dota, played World of Warcraft for 5 years. Diablo 2 was the game that got me into online gaming. I've been a Blizzard fan pretty much since I've been a gamer, so I can empathize with the people that are in that category of Blizzardites, you know, the people that will just try kind of any game Blizzard throws out there. So maybe I'm a biased source, I can certainly admit that, but sorry, the camera's shaking again. Maybe I'm a biased source, but I do think Heroes of the Storm is a much different experience, and it's worth having a go. I don't know if that means it's esports ready, though. That's a totally different question, and I'm just not sure about it. I haven't seen... I've watched a little bit of the competitive streams. I haven't played it enough. Like, I don't know all of the heroes like the back of my hand, so it's hard to watch when you don't really know what's going on, you know? I don't know how viable the game will be as an esport, but as definitely a more casual game, it's fun to play. We call it soaking. That's what soaking means, by the way. When you see me tweet about soaking or making jokes, that's the lingo they use, because you're getting experience in the lane. They say, dude, you gotta soak. You got to soak up the experience. And people will say it seriously when you're queuing. If you're not in lane and you're running around the jungle like a dipshit, they'll be like, dude, what are you doing? Somebody's not soaking. We're not getting the experience. You got to soak it up. Come on, man. And I think that is the most ridiculous lingo ever. You know, I guess we use weird stuff and do like, I got to farm. At least that's descriptive. You know, I can't think of anything better. Let's leech. I guess we would say leech experience. So you're just like leeching from the creeps. I don't know. Anyway, enough about these shitty MOBA games. Let's talk about Dota. That's all I have on my stuff. Let's talk about questions that all y'all had coming in here. I've got 3 of them to get us started. I'm going to try to glance at chat. Diablo 2 Lord of Destruction, still better than Diablo 3. I completely agree with that, 100%. I cannot agree more. I have not played Reaper of Souls, the expansion for Diablo 3. I gave up, but you know, that is kind of the only time that I said to Blizzard with my money as a consumer, I'm not doing it. I'm not taking the risk. Diablo 3, the vanilla version was so bad. I don't want to try this. You know what? This game sucks. I was so excited. I think part of it was that I had really high expectations because I loved Lord of Destruction so much. That game just encapsulated everything I was looking for in an online experience when I was at that age. It just, before social media, it was perfect for me at the time, you know. And coming into Diablo 3, I thought it was going to be an enhanced version, and then you have no PvP, not even just basic dueling. There doesn't have to be a ladder, there don't have to be arenas, but just that Diablo 2 just insane dueling scene of just going crazy, and going out there and, you know, NKing people and all this kind of stuff, camp in the town. It just added to the experience. That gave you something to strive for. And then to get there, you had to farm, and then whatever you farmed, you had to trade those items, you had to barter. And part of that bartering was you could rip people off because there wasn't a super standard currency. It's usually like a Soj or like a 320 or something that you could use as a basis for the economy, some sort of standard of scale. But you could still barter with people in such a way that it doesn't just break down to money. And that's what the auction house did. And it also took away the social aspect. That was the big thing. In Diablo 2, you were forced to socialize with people. You would make a game. You'd be like, hey, I've got this item. What do you have? Then you'd trade, and you'd start talking. You'd go back and forth. It was always a social experience. You're always bartering with strangers in town. That's really fun. Diablo 3, I'm like, all right, I'm grinding by myself. Now I'm going to put this on the auction house so I can make some money, and then I'm just going to buy some shit on the auction house. I'm not even playing with people. This is just a weird solitary experience that I'm not even really enjoying that much. The mechanics aren't that cool, and I want to be able to kill people. I'm not a single-player game kind of guy. That's just not how I roll. You know, I played Halo 1, Halo 2 a lot. Halo 1 was the game that introduced me to LAN experience. We'd bring our TVs, bring our Xboxes over, we'd hook them up, go crazy, you know. Never played the campaign, not once. I played the first level. I watched somebody play the Great Cartographer or whatever it is. I don't know shit. I just want to kill people. I want to know that I'm better than somebody else. I want to play that ladder. I want to queue it up. I want to headshot slap them down. That's all. Like Warcraft 3. I never played the Warcraft 3 campaign. I'm sad that I never played it because there's a lot of really good Warcraft lore in there, but never did it. Just I played the first level once. I was like, that was kind of fun, but I just want to do ladder. I want to interact with people. I want the social aspect. And that's what's lacking for me in single player. I'm going to do that one of these days. We're going to do a sub day where I go back and we play the games that Zyori missed. I'm going to play Warcraft 3 all the way through. We're going to do Reign of Chaos. We're going to do Frozen Throne. We're going to soak up all the lore. We're going to watch all the cinematics, and all we're going to talk about. It's going to be good. It's going to be good. We're saving that one for a rainy day now. One of these days, we're going to do it. So, okay, onward to the questions. Enough about Diablo. I don't know anything about Newbie. Sorry, I see that question popping up. I don't know anything about Newbie. I'm looking for more Spice Girls music. That's really what I'm looking for here. All right, so here's one question I pulled out of Twitch chat earlier. Can you talk about the viability of doing away with online qualifiers, etc., and moving to almost exclusively LAN events for Dota 2? So this is an interesting question for the point in time we are for Dota 2 right now. The scene has been exploding in terms of the events, the amount of money, the amount of sponsors that want to be involved, everything. The scene's really experienced rapid growth for the past couple of years, and at this point it's feeling somewhat sustainable. Maybe going to taper off a little bit in terms of the speed that it's starting to advance, but or continue to advance, but still growth is going to be there. I feel somewhat confident about. Not everyone is confident. There are some big sponsors, big folks out there that are not so confident, especially in China. One of the big, we were talking about in the studio, one of the big players over there thinks Dota is starting to withdraw a little bit. Of course, that's within China, not on the global market. So I think part of that is things need to be rebalanced a little bit. There's a little bit of a shuffle right now where there's always this tug of war between players and tournament organizers, and then there's viewers in there as well. Those are kind of the three main parties that make up esports. You can't really have tournaments without players. Players can't afford to play full-time without tournaments. Tournaments can't operate without viewers, and players are what attract the viewers. So it creates this triangle. That's not a triangle. This is a triangle. It creates this triangle of just a constant power struggle of who's doing what right and who's doing what wrong. And I think over the past year and a half, there was a shift where it seemed like some tournaments had a little too much power almost in terms of how much money they were giving out and whether or not they were giving it out and who they were accountable to. Things are getting a lot better now as players are getting more savvy, organizations are getting more savvy with international tax laws about how to get funds from international tournaments, how to appropriate the right amounts for taxes, how to do it all legally and make sure there's no red flags and everything's done properly. That's always been an issue in esports in general, and as more money's been in Dota, it was an issue while we were still a little too big for our or too small for our shoes, kind of, if that makes sense. So I think part of this paradigm shift of players sort of coming to the realization that they're a valuable commodity. They're the ones that essentially bring the audience. They're not standing for the same bullshit that tournaments used to be able to get away with. Over the past 2 years, players have had to deal with some really shitty conditions in a lot of different ways. Tournaments that haven't paid out, tournaments that have stiffed people for LANs, and just other problems. The Summit 2 with computers, that's a great example of an unacceptable environment for players to compete on a top-notch level for six-figure prize pools. So players now are banding together, and they're standing together to say, no, we're valuable. Our time is valuable. You got a team like Secret that only wants to play select events. They want to play big premier events. And, I think that's good. I think not every team has to play every event. That makes some events more special than others, and it also creates more room for mobility. That's the really important thing here. When you have the same top-tier teams playing at all the events all the time, it doesn't really harbor that much growth. But when you have these top-tier teams, like the true tier 1 teams, maybe 3 or 4 of them in the world that can afford to only play, one big tournament every month or something, those are spots in the mid-tier of tournaments that are in like that 50 to 100K prize pool that are too small for the top tier teams, but still huge for these second tier teams that are struggling to play full time, or if they are playing full time or living off of savings or what have you. So I think that's just part of the paradigm shift. I don't think we're going to see a time where we completely do away with online qualifiers. I think that would be terrible for an array of reasons. One, the content would be super boring. It would just all be invite LANs all the time. It would really hurt the growth of new teams moving upwards, because online qualifiers are how you get the practice to qualify for LANs. I think it's important to make sure tournaments maintain spots for qualifiers, invite top-tier teams, and then have 1 or 2 qualifier spots, even if it's an open qualifier or an invite qualifier with a big bracket. You handpick 16 teams that are somewhat stable. It's important to have some sort of online portion to the majority of tournaments. Now, that's not to say we can't have some tournaments that are online only. That's not to say ESL couldn't decide that some of their future huge blockbuster LANs in Frankfurt aren't just going to be invite only. That's fine. that variety is actually a good thing, but we don't want every tournament to be that way. And it's fine that we have online tournaments that don't have LANs, Dota Pit, things like that. I don't know how viable those are going to be in the future as LANs become more prestigious and where the big money's at with, tournaments like DAC, maybe some more of those popping up in the future. We could have TI and then mini TIs. Can you imagine if we had a season that consisted of a $10 million TI and then 2 to 3 like DAC size $2 to $3 million tournaments a year, and then everything else was just supplemented by these kind of 100K tournaments with basically without crowdfunding. Picture like a sum without crowdfunding. That's a much different landscape than what we're used to now, but I think the success of DAC maybe opens up some possibilities for that. Anytime you see a huge $1 million event that isn't run exclusively by a developer, I think that is a green light for some parties. At least there are some big stakeholders up there that see that as, oh, this is some evidence that this can work. You can get support from Valve, and people are seeing the value of cosmetics. Dota fiends see the value of cosmetics. The people that fiend the cosmetics understand how Valve is able to sell these Arcanas for $30 a piece, make hand over fist, and people are just opening up their wallets to buy these cosmetics. And they're able to translate that to understanding and having high expectations for tournaments with crowdfunding to make sure their cosmetics are good. People understand how and why hats are driving Dota 2 right now, but outsiders still aren't really getting it. There's a lot of people that have money that are slow on the uptake, that it's not just about the bells and whistles on the stream, it's not just about the teams. There's a degree of crowdfunding that is about the hats. You need good hats. People love their fucking hats, and I don't think it's a big problem in Dota right now, but I think it could be a problem. I think it's something we need to be wary of when you have something that isn't a core piece of competition driving the environment of the competition. I think that can be murky territory, if that's putting it right. I don't think there's a big problem with it right now, but you just have this extraneous force that is driven by its own economy that's kind of dictating how tournaments are able to grow their prize pools right now, who gets the prize pools, how your contacts are, and how the splits work. It's this very weird mini struggle. If you look at that the triangle that we had, one of the points that's the tournament organizers, that one's kind of broken up into its own triangle of tournament organizers, artists, and then people that make compendiums and all these other little power struggles, everybody trying to get their slice of the pie. So that was a very long-winded way to answer your question about doing away with online qualifiers, but I don't think we will come to a state where it is exclusively LAN events. If it does, I fear for that day, my friend. Okay, so how we doing on time here? Gotta keep my whistle wet. All right, we got about 10 minutes left. Looks like this podcast will be normal time. After all, we're gonna get right back to the Techies gameplay after this podcast is done. So, next question. I was thinking I had another one here. So, I guess to piggyback off that, what about pre-qualifier and qualifiers for BTS 3? Whose idea was this, and why did you not do more direct invites? Basically a similar mindset to what I just talked about. We really like the idea of qualifiers. We think it helps, at least makes a chance for teams to move up and create underdog stories. It's better than just hand-pick in inviting teams. Let me send in a wall of text here about racism. All right, Mr. Solwax, since you've posted this a couple of times, I will copy this and I will try to read it after I answer this question. Okay. How do I change the color here? Why is this so hard to read? Clear formatting. There we are. All right, so I don't know whose idea it was specifically. It might have been LD's idea. It just kind of came up in brainstorming. We were talking about different formats. We were thinking about the difference in formats between 6 teams and 8 teams and different ways we could handle the numbers, and this just seemed like a really good way to achieve our goals. We knew we wanted to lower the amount of games that teams had to play to qualify. We knew that we wanted to, in general, try to get away from best-of-1 big group stages, which tend to come with online qualifiers. So those two things together, it seemed like the qualifier, pre-qualifier system was a good way to give the top-tier teams a buffer to play very few games, and still have a chance to qualify. For a team like Secret, they need to win 3 best-of-3s and they're in the tournament. That's really not a big online commitment. That's a very easy sell compared to having to play like 10 round-robin games and then go into a double elim bracket after that. This is like, no, single elim, like you play through. If this is really that easy and you feel like you should be invited, winning 3 best-of-3s should not be an issue for you. And most of the top-tier teams agree with that. They'll say, you're right, this is not bad, this is fair. fair. This is way more fair than a massive group stage. So that was kind of the big motivation for that. Of course, that whole alliance decider thing, that was a big drama. I think people were right to question why Alliance was in Phase 2 when all these other teams that are on a similar, if not better level, were in Phase 1. Again, we talked about it in that hole in the studio where we did about the Summit 3. You should reference that for the full discussion. But it happened a few months ago when the state was a little bit different. Things happen quickly in the scene, and you can't only look at recent results when you're looking towards the future. You have to draw the line somewhere. It's a big gray area. One of the teams had to be chosen. If it was NIP, would you guys say, why was it NIP and not Hellraisers or this? You can point to recent results and DAC and all sorts of other things. But there's just a lot more to it than that. So check out the Summit 3 in the studio. It is on the BTS YouTube, youtube.com/BeyondTheSummitTV for more info on that. So, all right, this is going to probably the last question we'll take. It's whatever Soulwax has been talking about here, this big block of text. So we'll read his question. And there is another thing about racism that also happens within the own scene. It's broken English here. For example, in Brazil, there is some regional hate towards the Northwest. It's the less developed part of the country. And the worst part isn't that in South America in general, there are still few people that can speak and understand more than one language. And unfortunately, that's part of what brings the scene down. Of course, there are bad manners, but that's a thing. Thoughts? Okay, I'm sorry I read that out loud, dude. That is not really a put together question. I just looked at the block of text and thought I had something good in it. It sounds like y'all just need to get together. Sharon is Karen. I don't know what you're looking for. You're right. People that have language barriers have trouble. That's tricky. Okay. So, all right, this is the last question, and this is one that has another quick answer to it. Do you see a problem with Join Dota not getting any casting jobs? What do you think about it? They have casting jobs, okay? This is one of these questions that we get a lot that doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. It's been announced all over the place that they're doing ESL, they're doing MLG, they've been doing MLG. Why people think Join Dota is not casting anything, they are. Their content hasn't started yet, a lot of it for the year. They've been casting on the MLG TV platform. Maybe that's why you haven't seen it, because you just don't frequent MLG TV. That may be a big part of it. I don't know specifically what they're doing. I think they had WePlay or some other big tournament. I don't know. I mean, I don't work for Join Dota. I don't talk to them, but from what I know, they have plenty of casting jobs. It's not a big issue. They've chosen to do more of a quality over quantity, and BTS, not that we don't go for quality, but we just have a more broad spread and have a kind of a more diverse pool of casters, slightly different business model than Join Dota. They're a piggyback off of a website core, and we're kind of a studio first that doesn't even have a bloody website. So there's just a big difference in business model there. Hey Zyori, I live about 20 minutes away. Was there a good way to hang out with you guys sometimes? You guys seem like a cool group. Maybe you should PM me on Twitch, and maybe we'll make it happen. Maybe we'll meet up sometime. We've been talking about doing meetups, but we don't do it very often. Oh, Charlie's got a question. Here we go. Why do Gerg choose to start Gerg Live during Canada Cup so that Mott cannot join? Does he hate Mott? Was it because he banned Charlie from his chat yesterday? Is Mott getting too big for High Grounds TV, and Greg is trying to push him out of the organization? I think so. I'm going to go ahead and say yes to all of those. I think he hates Mott. I think it's because he banned Charlie from chat. I think it's because Mott's too big for High Grounds. And I think Gerg's trying to push him out. Big affirmative, Gerg. You are a monster. You are a machine, sir. Have fun at PAX East. I'm sad I'm not going to be there with him to hang out. Okay, I think we've got one last question here. I know I've said that 3 times, but I like this one. Zyori, how do you feel about the progress of content in Dota 2 over the years? Are you happier with one hero per event every 3 to 9 months, or would you rather have Dota 1 cast ported sooner and new heroes be considered? I'm okay with heroes coming out slowly. I think there's a lot of heroes in the game already. It's already like ridiculously hard to learn the game, and even for someone who's like a not even a power user, but like a moderate Dota player, it's hard to have played every hero and know like what all 4 of their abilities do, and have a degree of comfortability judging how long the range is or whatever. I don't know. It's cool and poppy when a new hero comes out, but I like the stability. I'm okay with Valve kind of stretching out the content and making it last. I would much rather have quality over quantity. I may be a bit of a bias source because, again, to reference S2, I remember the Han days when they were churning out new heroes every 3 to 4 weeks. You have a new hero every month, and I don't like that. It's by the time I get comfortable with the... What's nice about Dota is, I guess multiple heroes move into captain's mode at the same time sometimes, but it's not a new concept. You still kind of know the hero for the most part. There's been a lot of time where he's been in the game and he's been relevant. People know what's going on. We've seen the captain's draft tournament. Han would just drop these heroes in, and it often felt like they were really broken, and then they would get super nerfed and be super shitty, and it was just a weird... Some of it was that free-to-play, early access business model that kind of fucked it up, but it just left a really bad taste in my mouth when you're churning out heroes really quick. When your business model is kind of based around, we need more heroes, and I love that Valve's business model is very far away from that they can put out heroes at whatever frequency they want, whatever the frog thinks is appropriate, and I just think that's really good. Personally, I think one of the problems with esports in general is that things change too quickly. You know, a game like soccer, the rules don't really change that often. Pretty much it's been the same game forever. Dota changes a lot, and I think relative to a lot of other games, it changes at an okay pace. It finds a good balance of keeping our ADD-based market pretty interested. You know, it keeps us hooked. They keep things fresh with the game modes and the items and the new heroes and the crazy balance changes when they move creep camps around and all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, they don't overdo it. You know, they're not constantly jamming hats down our throats. There's not too many of these gimmicky year beast things. It's just enough that it doesn't bother me, and it's also just enough that it keeps me interested. There's talking points. There's constantly stuff that Dota's doing. Just the other day, they had that announcement about Dota 2 virtual reality. That shit's fucking crazy. You know, I don't know what's going on with that. That's some next generation, next level Valve shit there. So, all right, guys, that wraps up this podcast. Wow, that was fun. That time really flew by. Thank you, Twitch chat. You made that a charm. I didn't look at you for most of it, but the few questions you gave me were really, really good. I appreciate it. You guys are better than Reddit by a factor of about 10 million. Yeah, the heat of the sun. If you enjoyed the podcast, make sure you find us on iTunes. I will do you a favor and just go ahead and drop the link in chat right now. The home of the podcast is on Zyori.tv. You can find this podcast and all of the others there. If you want to subscribe, there's also an RSS feed link. But iTunes is usually the best way to get a hold of it. And, of course, ratings and comments over there on iTunes certainly do help spread the good word of the podcast. We're going to keep the stream going, though. I'm in the mood for more Techies. I've got another Red Bull here. I've eaten... startlingly little food and had startlingly little caffeine as well, and I'm still going strong. I just had too much ice cream last night. I'm gonna have a day of just water, meat, and Red Bull. I think that's how it's gonna go. I had just a bowl of meat for lunch left over from last night's carnitas. So that's it. Everything else, ZyoriTV, you know where to find it, Zyori.tv. Thanks, folks. We'll see you next week for podcast number 65.